we're moving along on trade very well. The United States was ripped off and taken advantage of by every country in the world, practically. That's not going to happen anymore, but we're going to make fair deals.
That was President Trump on Thursday, saying that trade talks are going very well as the White House works to negotiate deals with dozens of countries after pausing the worst of its sweeping reciprocal tariffs for 90 days. The president met with a Japanese trade delegation on Wednesday and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni on Thursday, even as tensions with China continued to escalate. Chinese President Xi Jinping embarked on a tour of Southeast Asia this week as he looks to strengthen trade ties with Vietnam, Malaysia, and Cambodia, promising to stand with those countries in the face of what he called shocks to the global order. We're back with our panel. So, Dan, where does this trade war stand? Let's leave China aside for a second and just focus on these other negotiating deals. Is this a retreat by Trump to try to an exit out of some of the tariff impact on the economy?
I don't think so, Paul. I really do not. There have been no details of any significance to emerge on any of these negotiations, which is interesting. And I think Trump himself, when he announced the tariffs originally in the Rose Garden, he went through this long history of tariffs, citing the amount of revenue was produced in 1885 and so forth, the McKinley tariff and how it was taken off in 1913 as one of the biggest mistakes in the history of the United States. People cannot somehow in the markets get it through their minds that Donald Trump sees tariffs as a source of revenue, an endless source of revenue. It's going to pay for it. Most people say, but look what's happening at the markets. I know he can be affected by an implosion in the markets. I know Scott Bessent and some of the others are trying to moderate him on that point. But, Paul, I don't think he's going to be pushed off that belief that there has to be some tariffs to produce revenue for the United States. I grant you it's a contradiction inside the idea of negotiating with these countries. But it's telling to me that we're not seeing any details about the negotiations because I think Trump is standing firm on the idea that tariffs should be producing revenue.
But Kim, we know that inside the administration there are people who are talking to the president and saying, look, this is doing some economic harm here. Look at what the markets are doing. We had the run against the dollar for a while. The bond market went kind of wild for a bit, and yields have been going up. And there's even a risk of recession. I guess, is Trump likely to try to at least moderate these tariffs to try to, I know he's going to keep the 10% rate on, but what about the rest?
The deals suggest that, yes, the deals suggest that those within the administration that were making the argument that this is very risky from a market perspective. You could see what was happening in the bond market and the dollar market, that this needed a modulation. And so this, to me, is an exit ramp. Right now, the administration says 90 deals in 90 days. I think that is wildly optimistic. Sometimes trade deals, in many cases, can take years to put together. I think that they will speed that up. I'm not even expecting, I have to tell you, Paul, some of these trade deals to be nearly as sweeping as Trump has billed them. Right. And I think that will say something, too. He wants to be able to say he sealed a deal, say that it's good for the country, and move on to the next one. But overall, I think that it means that those voices in the administration that were counseling a little bit of a pullback here right now are the ones that have his ear.
And Alicia, let's focus on China. The Xi Jinping, president of China, doesn't seem to be backing down in retaliation against Trump, and they're even escalating, right? Stopping the delivery of Boeing jets, stopping American access to rare earth minerals. Who has the upper hand in the U.S.-China spat?
Well, that's what I worry that China does for all those reasons, that we are completely dependent on China for rare earth minerals and a lot of other critical minerals, such as lithium. China also has the power to investigate and harass a lot of U.S. businesses that do business in China. In fact, it has launched an antitrust investigation into DuPont. As you mentioned, it has also told Chinese airlines do not buy from Boeing, instead buy from Airbus or Chinese homegrown competitor. So U.S. companies have a lot to lose, both in terms of business in China exports, and I think Xi Jinping is kind of is exploiting that. And I'm not sure that has fully sunk in with this administration.
Dan, another development this week on the economic front was Trump attacking the Federal Reserve for not cutting rates and the chairman, Jerome Powell. And I wonder if that's partly because Trump realizes that there's going to be some economic damage here from the tariffs, and he's counting on the Federal Reserve to ride to his rescue. Can it do that?
Well, it's an open question whether he could fire Jay Powell, and Jay Powell says he would fight it. And so if he tried to do that, it would roll on for a while. This is one area, I think, where someone like Scott Bessent could caution the president. The problem with getting into a fight over firing Powell is that it's going to disrupt the markets beyond what they're already disrupted. And simply trying to get somebody in there, replace Powell, who's going to do what Trump wants, would simply make that Fed chairman an arm of Trump, would make Trump effectively the Fed chairman and subject to his capriciousness over where interest rates should go. That would really disrupt markets.
And even if he doesn't fire Powell, monetary policy, even a rate cut, can't really take the place of better policy when it comes to economic